How you going? You all look pretty awake for this time of the morning. I blame the coffee. One thing before I start, the slides that will appear behind me have got nothing to do with the talk. They're just so that you've got something nice to look at. Has anyone heard of Loving Earth before? Okay, cool. Well, I'll just give you a little bit of a background so you can sort of place me and what I do. Loving Earth has always been more than its products. The impulse for it began when my business partner and I were living on an ashram in India, and we saw how the villagers there were turning their topsoil into bricks and trucking it out of this beautiful valley just north of Mumbai. And it was really heartbreaking to see that their traditional form of livelihood was just getting sent out of the valley. And then we lived in Mexico for a few years, and in the south of Mexico there's all these villages that have no men in them because they've all gone to the States to work, like all around the Guatemalan border and south of Oaxaca. And on the feast days they come back and everyone's crying and hugging and heartbroken because family and community is really part of Mexican well-being. Like, it's a really part of their social mores. And so Loving Earth was born out of the desire to help Indigenous cultures preserve their lifestyle, preserve their economic lifestyle, and also out of the desire to create whole, real food with real nutrients in it that have been minimally processed. We put as few ingredients as we can into our products so that you're getting real nutrition. So that's about Loving Earth. Ethics, that's what we've been calling it in the office, ethics. Martha is going to talk about ethics. So here we go, ethics. I'm going to start in a way that may not seem related to ethics, but it will come round. So I'm just going to have a drink of water. I grew up in a pretty nomadic family. Me and my mum and dad and my two sisters moved countries every 3 years because my father used to build massive steel mills all around the world, and it would take 3.5 years to build them. So I first moved countries when I was 18 months old. I went from the chilly streets of the UK in the late 60s to sweltering Calcutta in the late 60s, and I ended up going to 7 new schools, often in a whole new culture. And I remember one time we were back in Australia and leaving to go to England again, to go up north, up to Middlesbrough. And I was 9, and I was really coveting these totally cool long white socks that were just all the rage at the time, and they had these frills around the top like little tutus. And so Mum bought them for me in order to kind of ease the trauma of my young heart moving across the world. And in my first day at Bewley Hill Primary School, I wore them. It's pulled up tight and just so proud of them. And I'm sitting at the table, these little tables, and there's like 6 little 9-year-olds around it, and the teacher's going, all right, we're going to sing a song. I want to hear everybody singing. And the kids at the table are whispering to each other and pointing at my legs. And I was horrified. Like, they're just not thinking that these socks are cool, you know. So at recess, I go outside and I turn them inside out so that I've just got long white socks with funny lumps around the top. But it really showed me how truth and opinion are completely different things. Like, what was true in Australia wasn't true in the UK. It was just an opinion, really. And another incident was when I was in my early teens, and we were in Annaba, which is the capital city of Algeria, and we were in a pastry shop, my sisters and my mum and me. It's a port town, it's really industrial, and there are lorries going by outside and Arab kids in the shop milling around, like gawking at the foreigners and hoping they'd get a coin and just being generally cheeky like kids are. And I was wearing a Bedouin coat, like a traditional Bedouin camel hair coat. And the shopkeeper thought that I was Arab. I'm not a natural blonde. And shooed me out of the shop with the Arab kids. And that really struck me, because that was like his subjective truth of the situation just completely changed reality. Like, truth is such a malleable thing. And then there's one more thing I want to tell you about. That is later on, when I'm in my 20s, I met a druid. And I was initiated into the pagan religion, into Wicca. So I was initiated as a witch. And the pagan religion is the Celtic wisdom tradition. Like, that's our Celtic European heritage of wisdom, and it has deep, deep knowledge about the natural world and about the inner world and about how energy works. And you have to study 22 years to become a druid. And the druids are like the librarians of the pagan tradition. The witches are like the practitioners, and they're in the villages, and they do the transformation in the village. Like, they solve the problems in the village, and if they can't figure it out, they go to the druid, and the druid gives them the knowledge. And there's only one thou shalt not rule in Wicca, which is it's called the prohibition of narrowing. And it is, thou shalt not narrow the truth. So that means you shall not tell someone else what's true for them. And this, to me, is ethics. That's what ethics are. Ethics are your authentic inner truth. And it's an infallible thing that you had when you were born, and you still have, despite the fact it may be clouded by many, 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 many other people's opinions. That you haven't lost anything. It's a muscle that's not been used. And culturally, for thousands of years, we have had a prescriptive set of rules that we are supposed to live by. We've been given them from an external authority, saying you should marry this person, you should think these things, you should eat this food, you should wear these clothes, you should sit in this way, you should not think these things, you should not do those things. Like, we've been told since we were tiny, do this so that I can be happy, do this so that I feel okay in myself. And the reason that like, the underlying idea behind that is that our innate nature is fallible, and that we can't trust ourselves to find the right answer. So we need a higher authority to protect us from ourselves and tell us what's true, and that's a fundamental flaw. I think that's a fundamental flaw in the way that we think as a society, and I think it's caused problem after problem after problem, and I think that's something that's shifting. I think that people just aren't, like, it's just untenable. It's reached a pitch where it can't sustain itself anymore, and a lot of those mores are starting to dissolve, like the rules from the church or the Victorian morality about how we should behave, or sexual rules, or everything's loosening up. But the judge that we've created for ourselves now is the media. The media is showing us, is judging us. We're judging ourselves by how we look, and by the instant judgment. Like, we've got this paper thin wall of Facebook profiles and travel shots, and I'm a vegan, and these are my abs, and I like this designer, and here's my puppy, you know. And it's just bullshit. It's such a charade, and it's not where the game is. Like, the game, the party or the force or the power, that's when you let all of that subside and you find your own authentic truth. Like, that's where you inspire people, that's where you feel joy, that's where inspiration comes, you know, you're flying high, you're feisty, you're full of yourself, Your timing is excellent. I forgot what I'm going to say next. Hang on. And no matter how little time you've spent remembering that or getting in touch with that, it never diminishes. Like, it's always there. It's like a beacon. Kids have it. Everyone's got it. And it's exactly the same as the creative process. When you're wanting to do a creative project, you're courting the muse, say, or you're getting into the zone. So you're letting comparison go, you're letting judgment go, insecurity go, and when you're on it, when you drop into it, you know you're there. And that you're flying, you know, ideas are coming thick and fast, and time disappears. It's such a joyful experience, and that's you getting in touch with your inner truth. Like, I see creativity and ethics, they just stem from the same place. It all stems from the same place, and it's not something that you do and it's done. You know, like, you don't say, oh, I paint this beautiful painting. Okay, that's done. Now I've done art. Now I've accomplished art. I can tick that off my list. There we go, that's art. Right, now what's next? Like, once you do one painting, it just gives birth to another and another and another, and now I could do this. It's like, so what you're actually doing is you're tapping into a living force. Like, you're tapping into a conscious living force. That's ethics. Actually, I think it's my authentic truth as it interacts with the world. That would be my definition of ethics. And so I'm changing. I'm a living force. The world is changing. The world's alive. It's not something that ever stops. And we came across this in Loving Earth a few years ago. We're very clear that we're a purpose-driven company. And subconsciously, we kind of were like, okay, that's done. Now we'll get on with business. And we had extraordinary success. We had to move factories every year because we just kept expanding so fast. We've never advertised. Everything's word of mouth. We had all the trappings of success, and then all of a sudden, our staff turned around and said, "We're not happy. This is not ethical. You're not treating us it's not healthy, sustainable, or fair what you're doing." And it was a real shock to us, and because we'd sort of put ethics aside as though it was something that could be completed or that it was a checklist, and we hadn't really understood how it evolves and how the world evolves. So we stopped taking on new wholesale customers, we stopped doing new products, and we just looked at that. And what it made me do was say, well, what's success? You know, like, we had success, that's not success. And I asked myself, what would happen if I looked at the company as a living organism instead of as a machine? Because culturally we tend to look at things as machines. Like, in allopathic medicine, for example, and I know this is simplistic, but it's still a true idea. Something will be wrong with my knee, so I'll be given a drug for my knee, but then that will throw my kidneys out. So then I'll be given something for my kidneys, and then my skin will start to itch. So then I'll be given something for my skin. It's like looking at all the parts and trying to fix one isolated part instead of looking at the whole body and saying, oh, well, that's because of the skeletal structure here, and that's because the head's out, you know? And so if you're looking at a company, and people look at companies as machines, but if you look at a company as a living organism, you've got to say, well, where's nourishment? What's sickness? How do I diagnose health and sickness? And where's the life force? How's the life force flowing? So, and we realised that the action words are to listen and to respond. Like, that's what you need to do when you're dealing with life, with a living thing. And we realised that the highest ideal that we have for the company is that we are a strong, tall, vibrant tree in a thriving ecosystem. And all of that is loving earth. And our ecosystem is everyone that we touch. Our vision and mission statement is, in order to be an uplifting presence in the world. That's our purpose. We create beautiful products and inspire conscious living in all those we touch. Not in a creepy way. In a consensual way. And conscious living, that's the thing. That's the key for me in this talk. That's what ethics are. They're conscious living. And I think that's what people are looking for. I don't think the old ways, it's just going out now. People want truth. They're craving truth and they're craving connection. And if you don't have connection with yourself, you got nothing. You got nothing to give at all. Yeah, that's it. Ethics by Martha.